course of the week. And particularly in this time, everything I'm doing, I generally put on an Outlook calendar, where I have appointment times and that kind of thing, which can be quite flexible, but it means that on days where I'm not in, other people can access that as well. And getting onto things as soon as possible. So, if I've had a chat to somebody, I'll document that chat fairly soon after, rather than let it go for a week or two. Were there any other questions or issues? Any thoughts on, what you might want to do career-wise after school?
There's a question there, Adam.
Yes.
You're on mute now.
The job can be quite difficult at times, because as I said, we have conversations around things like suicide, self-harm, eating disorders is another difficult one. I've worked in the emergency department at Bendigo, and I know after talking to one young individual, I was needing a bit of a debrief. So self-care, even for workers, is quite important. And in saying that, a lot of the suggestions I'll give to people are things I've tried myself. Because I think we need to be realistic about what's possible. We've all got different pressures, time, school, and those kinds of things. So the best piece of advice to give someone wanting to become a psychologist or a career similar to that, again, when you're at university, I think choosing your placements quite wisely. My final placement was for 3 months, and I did that in a community mental health team in Melbourne. And I'd honestly say today, if I hadn't have done that placement, I don't think I'd be where I am today and doing what I am doing today. In saying that, I kind of used my placements as a bit of a holiday too. So I went to Hobart, Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne, and just used it as an excuse to sort of get out of my comfort zone where I'm by myself. And I guess also looking at, what are your strengths, what are your skills? Because even something like psychology, I've got a cousin that's studying psychology, but their overall plan is to go into the police force. But having that psychology background then allows them not to just go in as your base level officer, but getting a role within the police force that's more doing what they're interested in. So, your degree might say this is what it is, but I think the options for what you can do with that are greater, and it's continually changing. In terms of my role here at the school and around the area, there are psychologists employed, social workers, and occupational therapists. So there's a fairly broad range that you can do to be in this role. Were there any other sort of careers that people were considering? No? I can see some of you thinking. Yes, all the time. I think it's quite common, we can't go into any situation thinking that we're going to have all the answers. When I was in community mental health, we pretty much the end decision laid with the psychiatrist. and even in the current setting, I would have a talk to teachers and the principal, the assistant principal, if things were coming up that I didn't know. One thing I will say about my degree and studying at Charles Sturt is I quite often say they didn't teach me to know everything. They taught me more how to think. So I'd say one of the strengths you get in allied health is not knowing everything, but knowing how to find out what you need in an efficient manner. The other thing that quite often comes up, particularly when talking to the families, you might make suggestions and they go, oh, but I've been telling them that. And I find sometimes, even you might find with friends, you might have, know what they need to do, but sometimes you're not always the right person. And that's again why I've spoken previously about trying to encourage anyone to speak up if they are going through anything or have any particular issues. Any last questions?
Adam, I'm just recording this. Oh, sorry. Hi, Adam. I'm just recording this.
Hi.
And I just wondered, would you mind going over what you said at the beginning about what your other jobs have been since you left school and where you started your course? And sorry to for you to have to repeat it again, but just for the sake of the video so I can show other students.
No problem. So again, finishing, I was 17 when I finished high school. Went and started university the following year doing business, which I think going from a small country town at that point was a bit much for me. So I returned home to live with my parents, worked doing seasonal work on farms, I worked on a stone fruit farm doing everything but picking. And then I entered an apprenticeship as a butcher. I found with that I was physically exhausted at the end of the day, but not mentally. So that led to issues with insomnia, that kind of thing. So I decided to return to uni, and that's when I studied occupational therapy. After that, my first job as an occupational therapist was with Vision Australia. So that's working with blindness and low vision and assistive technology. So that was talking to a lot of people about how to make things more visible to people who were completely blind and working out what other things could be useful. From there, I went to the Independent Living Centre, and so that was a huge equipment display that we'd have people come in and we'd go around and based on what their needs were, work out what was available to sort of help them with their day-to-day living. And then I moved over into community mental health, so that's included senior roles, working in intake, a subacute setting, so that's people that weren't in an acute inpatient setting, so they were relatively well but needed a bit extra support living day to day. And then I moved over into this role as a mental health practitioner in schools, and I work between Pyramid Hill and Eaglehawk Secondary. And I think, I guess the picture that sort of paints is there's not necessarily a linear path. Each of those jobs has been quite different, but there's been reasons why I left one job and went to another.
We had another occupational therapist talk to the students a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying how occupational therapy can lead into so many different directions. So you've just given us a perfect example, Adam, of how OT can lead to mental health work.
Yep.
And you didn't have to do any extra training to become a mental health practitioner?
When I took on a senior role with Bendigo Health, I've done the requirements for the graduate certificate in mental health.
Yeah.
Because with nursing in particular, Bendigo Health will employ about 20 to 30 nurses each year that go through that same program, so they can receive further education. Because it used to be that you could be a registered psychiatric nurse, whereas that isn't a thing anymore, and that's why they run that extra course and want that extra qualification. So, and over the years, particularly, I've done professional development courses in things like sensory modulation, which is more of an OT-specific intervention to use within the mental health settings.
Yep. That's great. Thanks for that. Has anyone else got any other questions? What's a droop, Raf?
Is a fruit.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Raf.
No, and as I said, I did everything but picking, and that's because I'm colourblind. So I wouldn't know what a ripe piece of fruit really looks like in amongst all the others.
That's funny. Well, I think we're just about done, Adam.
Yep.
Covered it really well. Thank you.
So as I said earlier, I'll send out what I'd put in a Word document afterwards too, just so you can come back to that, and I'll be here on Tuesdays if anybody has any other questions.
Yep. Would someone like to say thanks to Adam?
Thank you for, I guess, giving us your time in your day and just giving us really insightful information for the day.